Okay, once again, thank you for joining us this evening as we try to demystify all these data protection terms and what's expected of us and how much interaction we have with whatever data that we have and what are some of the actually necessary precautions and necessary, ways of handling the data that, we tend to work with each and every day as we interact with, with this digital age and everything now coming online. That means there's more data being transmitted every other minute, every other second. And my name, let me reintroduce because of those who came in late. I'm Simon Ngeru. I'm a mentor at Marshall School of IT, and I'm also a software engineer by profession, having practiced, and that's pretty much about me. We'll share all these LinkedIn and all other handles, for follow up and trying to connect more with, like-minded people, and we'll be okay. So I think I'll just introduce probably Marshall School of IT just to, to understand like exactly the team that has brought us together, just to see some of, just two items of interest with what they do. Then I'll, let Wendy to proceed. So I'll just maybe use 2 or so minutes just to, see what we have here. Uh, so this is an e-learning platform that has been brought up in the last 1 year, actually. And part of, I hope everyone is seeing my screen. Maybe on the chat, someone can comment just to be sure. I'm not, anyone who can see my screen can just drop a chat. Yeah, but basically, this is the e-learning site. This is the link, elearning.marshall.co.ke. I'll just paste it in there. It has quite a number of courses in and around different sectors, but there's a huge bias in AI and data. So that means there is more interest in, software engineering courses, data science, and they're still, based on their entry level, courses. There's still some courses which are advanced. So it basically takes care of, beginner all the way to, expert level in tech. And looking at it now, with now the establishment of all these other, terms coming into play now, like the data protection, AI and machine learning, there is a lot of, dark or rather gray areas that we are trying to expound by day. And some of these courses, actually, even the data protection one, soon it will be available on this platform. Actually, I think maybe next week should be okay. And some courses are free, some courses are paid, so you can always join, see what your interest lies in. Also, maybe if you're switching from another probably career, you can be able to see like what can you probably, get interest in and learn, because again it's a continuous process. So I'll ask everyone to, just pop by, see through the courses, what could be of interest to you, and probably what's missing that perhaps you think could be added. So that's basically the e-learning platform. That's one of the products. And the other product that is coming in is the Edu Jenga apps. This is the Jenga AI rather. And this is actually an AI ML driven tutor for you that's basically meant for, self-paced learning that it's basically triggered by your curiosity. So you can actually ask about anything. So I just say, what is cyber security. So basically what I'm trying to, just showcase is that you can actually learn about any topic of interest. So what happens is that it tries to, bring a syllabus for you for that particular point of interest. For my case here is cybersecurity. So it could be different. It could be something else about, maybe even chemistry and whatnot. So you can always learn. And now we're integrating mind maps and also diagrams in the process. So what happens is that you learn in the process. And now as you learn through it, you'll have pop-up quizzes that are coming in just to, measure your level for understanding, like how well are you grabbing all these questions that you've asked and all this learning that you've been doing for the last, say, maybe 30 minutes, for the last maybe 45 minutes. Then from there, you get a personalized experience whereby the machine tends to get your level of understanding. How fast do you grab things, and probably choice of words for it, less jargons and whatnot. And based on your answers to the quizzes, then the other sessions come in, tuned to your understanding. And it's actually a very nice product. You can actually, just go try it and see any topic of interest that you may have, and just trigger your curiosity. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. And we'll also be, expecting feedback from you in terms of how you interact with it. If you find some areas of improvement, feel free to share. And it's always a very welcoming, team here. So you can always share your feedback through the various platforms, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, everywhere. You can tag them. You can also, share your experience. And I think that's it about the introductory bit about, Marshall School of IT and what they're building. So those are the two main platforms at the moment, and they're going to be improved with time. And without further ado, I think I'll just welcome our speaker for the day, who is Wendy, to just, take us through these, data protection session, to understand what exactly do we need to know, and what kind of data do we interact with, and just break it up for us. And I think from there we'll also have a Q&A session, and we can be able to interact with you all. And looking forward to a very interactive session. And when you're called upon, feel free to drop a chat, feel free to speak through the session. So make it as interactive as possible, and I think we'll be fine. So I think over to you, Wendy.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Okay, so my name is Wendy Kadojima. I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I am also a data protection officer, and some may also say I'm a data protection expert, though I know I'm not at that level yet. So for today, I'll be taking us through data protection and compliance, and an overview of it. We won't get very much in depth, but I'll give a general overview, then we can have a few questions. And if there's need for a follow-up session, we can organize the same with Marshall School of IT. So we'll just get started. So the first thing we have to understand is what is data protection and what compliance means. So data protection, as projected, basically refers to set measures and laws that are implemented to safeguard personal data. So personal data or sensitive data is basically anything that relates to you as a person. For example, in Kenya could be your ID number rather, it could be your maybe birth certificate, basically anything that can be used to identify you or to trace you as a person. And then we have compliance, which basically just means entailing and adhering to the legal requirements that govern data protection. We have several legal requirements. Most of them are still, some are still being made because data protection is a fairly new issue. But we have some that are already in set, such as the Data Protection Act 2019. And that is compliance is basically adhering to those set regulations. So basically, organizations and individuals are required to comply with these set data protection laws. So we'll just go straight to the presentation, where we'll start by looking at the key regulations, the laws and regulations that guide data protection. So we have some of them projected, but I'll just divide them at an international level, regional level, and the national level. So at the international level, we have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that is the UDHR, because the right to privacy is basically an international regulation that is required to be adhered to by individuals, by companies, by nations. Basically, the right to privacy is a right that everyone. So the next one is we have the Convention 108. This one is from 28th January 1981, basically just alluded to the right to privacy, nothing in depth on things such as data protection. These ones are basically just touching on the right to privacy, which is where the Data Protection Act and the data protection laws emanated from. Then we also have the General Data Protection Regulation, which is the GDPR. This is the most recent, and it is actually the statute that most countries have borrowed their Data Protection Act and data protection laws from. Then at a regional level, we have the African Union Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection. This one is for the African countries, and it has been signed in 16 countries in Africa and ratified in 13 countries. And then we have the African Union Data Policy Framework, which was adopted by the AU Executive Council. That was in February 2022. Then, so in Africa, 48 countries out of the 54 countries have data protection laws and or regulations so far, and they are practicing them actively. So at a national level, we have the Constitution of Kenya, which is the main law in Kenya, and at Article 31, it provides for the right to privacy. So this is the one that has the basis for the Data Protection Act. So after the Constitution now, we have the Data Protection Act. So before I go to the Data Protection Act, Article 31 specifically, if I could just read it verbatim, Article 31 C and D, and it provides that every person has the right to privacy, which includes the right not to have their information relating to their family or private affairs unnecessarily required or revealed, or the privacy of their communications infringed. So this is basically the section of the that forms the basis for the Data Protection Act. So again, so we have now the Data Protection Act, which is the act that was, it's a 2019 act. It was enacted in 2019 to give effect to Article 31 of the Constitution. And again, before we delve into the act, we have some key things that happened to the data protection laws, that is between 2019 and 2020. So in 2019, the act was enacted. Then in 2020, the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, that is ODPC, was established as an independent state office. And in November 2020, the Data Commissioner was appointed. So that's basically whatever happened between enactment of the act and not to having the ODPC as an independent office. So after looking at the statute, so we'll just go straight to the Data Protection Act of 2019. And the first thing we'll look at are the principles that this act provides for data protection. So data protection is generally guided by a few principles that must be followed by either organizations or individuals. These are organizations that are involved in the collection of data or processing of data. It may be personal data or any sort of data. We have principles that guide the same. So the first principle that we have is lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. And before I look at the principles, sorry, I'd like to say that the principles in the Data Protection Act of 2019 are fairly the same as the principles for the GDPR. So basically, since the GDPR applies to countries that are in the European Union, our Data Protection Act borrowed a lot from the GDPR. And I will just go straight to the principles. So the first principle is lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. So the Data Protection Act provides that all data processors or controllers, we will get to the definitions of that after the principles. So all data is supposed to be collected with fairness and transparency. When you're collecting data from a data subject, as the person collecting it, you should be able to tell them the reason why you're collecting the data and the use of the data. You cannot just go to a person and ask them to give their ID number or their photographs or their birth certificate without actually providing the actual reason why you're collecting the data. That is intertwined with lawfulness. You cannot also collect data in an unlawful way. For example, you can't just go and steal someone's private information and you retain it. That is the first principle. The second principle is integrity and confidentiality. Once you collect someone's private information or someone's personal data, you're required to keep it in an integral way and in a confidential way. If you collected, let's say, medical information for the purpose of treatment, you're not expected to post that information on social media or go around and giving this information to people. It should be confidential. We also have the principle of storage limitation. This is that the data that you collect should be stored for a specific period of time. Once the data beats the purpose that you had collected it for, the same should be destroyed. And it should be destroyed in a way that it does not put the data subject at risk. Then we also have purpose limitation. This is to mean that the data should be collected for a specific purpose. If you had collected the data, let's say for Marshall School, if you had collected the data to register people in classes, it should remain as information collected for class registration. The same should not be used for other different reasons. Then we also have data minimization. This is to mean that you should collect data that is just enough for the purpose that you're getting it for. There's no need to collect excessive data that surpasses the need for whatever you intend on using it for. Then we have accuracy and accountability. Accuracy basically just collects data for whatever reason you're supposed to get it for. Accountability is if there's a data breach or if there's an issue with the data that you collected, the data processor or controller should be in a position to take accountability and to explain whatever happened to cause the breach. Okay, that's for the principles. Then, so the principles are also, so basically these principles are the ones that guide the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, the ODPC. So, and the ODPC has a few roles in order to enforce the principles. A minute. So sorry, apologies. I have just been informed that I'm actually not going with the slides. The corrected slides will be shared later. Some of the information is actually not on the slides, but we'll get back to the slides in a few. I've realized I had to give a brief background and an introduction on the Office of the Data Protection Commission and the principles, but we will get back to whatever is on the slides. My sincerest apologies for that. So I was just on the mandate and the roles of the ODPC, and they have roles such as regulating the processing of personal data, ensuring that personal data is guided as per the principles, protecting the privacy of individuals, and establishing the legal and institutional mechanism to protect data. So that's just a brief overview on the regulations and the ODPC. So we'll now go back to the slides where we have the best practices to safeguard data and avoid penalties. So after having looked at the Office of the Data Protection, the statutes that guide data protection, now we can look at a more practical aspect, which is the practices that businesses and individuals can enforce in order to safeguard data and avoid penalties, because the Act, although not as stringent on the penalties, if there's a data breach and it goes unreported and it has some effects to the data subject, you might have to pay a few fines or can even be liable to legal actions. So the first one, which is not on the slides, which I'll begin with, is to register under ODPC. So the Act has a requirement that there are some fields that are people, when they're in some fields, they're required to register as either data processors or data controllers. That is before now you even get to the practices. So examples of those fields are such as the medical field, if you're in the gambling industry, or basically if you're processing personal information, you're required to register. The second best practice is to implement strong data security measures. So these include things such as encryption of sensitive data, multiple factor identification, basically anything that you can do within your power to ensure that personal data is protected. And then we have ensuring compliance with legal requirements. So for this one, if you're not in the legal field, there might be need to hire a data protection officer. This is basically someone who will and help you with the compliance, the audits if necessary, the compliance with the data protection laws, update the company or the individual on any advancements in the data protection law, and report, if need be, any data breaches, because the Act has specific timelines for reporting. Then we have enhanced data subjects' right protection. So data subjects are basically the people who the information belongs to. We call them data subjects. If you're collecting information from a person, let's say it's someone whose ID number you have, the owner of that ID number or the ID is the data subject. So you have to ensure that their rights are protected. And some of the ways of ensuring that their rights are protected is obtaining informed consent before data collection. So informed consent, I will just briefly explain what informed consent is. Informed consent is whereby you actually give this person a very specific and very clear information of the data that you'll be collecting. Having that one-line disclaimer at the end of a form that the data collected here is maybe to your privy or whatever, having that one line does not suffice. This person has to be explained to, we are collecting your ID number for reasons of maybe registration, for reasons of maybe using it for 1, 2, 3. that is informed consent. And as part of informed consent, you also have to inform them of their other rights. For example, one of my favorite rights of a data subject is the right to deletion, because most companies and individuals usually assume that once you give your personal data, they can retain it for as long as they wish. But the Act and statutes basically provide that a data subject has the right to deletion. So once I give you my information and I realize I am not comfortable with the organization having my information, I should have the right to tell you to delete my information. And you should be able to delete my information and have a confirmation mechanism that you have actually deleted my information. No one has the right to retain your personal information for longer than the necessary period or whatever purpose they needed it for. Another way to enhance rights of data subjects is to notify authorities and affected individuals in case of a data breach. So according to our laws and statutes, if there's a data breach and you identify the same, you should notify the ODPC that there was a data breach in your company and this number of individuals were affected. You could also, if you can identify the reason, you could also give a reason for that. So that once the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner is notified on that, they can decide on how to act with that information. We also have train employees and foster a data protection culture. So if you're in a company with several employees, you can just conduct regular data protection trainings. You can also have data breach drills to just keep your employees prepared in case something happens. You know how they react in order for you to know now how to safeguard your data based on how your employees react. Then you also have established reporting channels for potential data protection concerns. So in companies, there should be a clear channel of communication in case there's a data breach. If someone realizes there's a data breach, they should be able to know who they will contact next and who will actually pass this information to the ODPC. You cannot just be in a company where there's a data breach, and all that is when you're asking yourself, who was I supposed to report to? How was this supposed to be solved? By the time you have all those things figured out, it might be a little late. Your information might be out there, which might just be a whole different thing. So we have adopt private by design. Adopt privacy by design. This basically means you integrate data protection measures in the development of your products and services. If you're using a certain system, maybe for us, I could say for case of file storage, the data protection measures should already be part of the system. So other ways of adopting privacy by design could be minimizing data collection, automating compliance processes, regular compliance audits, and as I've mentioned before, having data breach drills or simulations to just know how your employees react and to know whatever happens in case of a data breach. So our next part is the future of data privacy. So since we already have these legal frameworks in place, now we just have to know exactly where these things are leading us to, or whatever we expect from maybe in the legal aspect and in the data aspect. So just a simulation, for example, if you look at it, the future of data privacy, the first thing that we know might happen is increased regulatory scrutiny. This is because as AI, let's say AI is advancing, technology is advancing, we have now governments worldwide are trying to enact stricter laws to enhance data protection. In Kenya, we also have an advancement in data protection laws. We have bills that have tried to be passed. We have acts. We also have an increase in legislation on data breaches. The Office of the Data Protection is actually quite busy regarding several cases on data breaches. Then we also have greater consumer awareness and control. Initially, we would say only the tech-savvy people were aware of things such as data protection, data breaches. But now even your regular person will just ask you, what are you collecting my information for? This is my private information. You don't need it. So we have increased consumer awareness and control. Individuals are actually getting more aware of their rights in terms of data protection and are actually trying to enact and act on this improved awareness. Then we also have expansion of global data protection laws. So as you have seen when I was reading through the regional data protection laws, we have seen that most countries in Africa, which is 48 actually, have data protection laws. So basically, even the countries that did not have data protection laws at the moment are in the process of enacting data protection laws. And if you have noted, most companies as well are starting to embrace the issue of data protection. Most of them are embracing the issue of having data protection officers, having data protection policies, which is a great improvement when you compare it to whatever was the case back then. Actually, there's an issue of cross-border data transfer mechanisms because basically, if you look at our laws, if you would like to transfer data, personal data cross-border, you need consent from the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. So this is, and you can also not transfer data to a country that does not have stringent data protection laws. So because this is also affecting things such as inter-border trade and all that, you can see that most countries are actually embracing data protection laws. So the next thing is stronger cybersecurity measures. So you can see that to just avoid the mitigation and all those clashes with the law, most organizations and companies are actually investing in advanced threat detection systems. You don't need an individual to tell you this is an issue, this could cause a problem. When most organizations are embracing inbuilt threat detection systems. So that's basically it from the webinar, but the conclusion is that data protection and compliance is actually crucial and that individuals and organizations need to stay informed on the laws and the statutes that are emerging. Thank you. If there are any questions, the floor is open.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. It's been quite a session. Yeah, very informative. And I'm actually, getting to learn some of these, litigation terms around, data protection and whatnot. And being in the digital age that we are in, actually, I think there is more to it than we thought, and actually it becomes enlightening with time. And thank you very much. So I welcome members on the floor to just, if you have a question, you can maybe unmute yourself and ask the question. You can also make use of the chat box and, drop your question. And I think while at it, I'll be the first one to ask. And Wendy, bearing in mind maybe some of these costs that arise from maybe having your maybe legal person within within a small business, for instance, a business that cannot afford to have a lawyer in place to be checking through all this stuff, and maybe even the data protection officer, a case study of probably maybe a photographer who just does photos and maybe post them on Instagram without consent, without anything. Is there any like some practical steps that some business can follow, just trying to balance between compliance and operational efficiency now, and probably some pitfalls to watch for maybe these small businesses and such? Is there some issues and maybe a comment on the same?
Okay, so if I understood your question correctly, you are asking if a small organization maybe cannot afford to retain a full-time lawyer?
Yeah, some of
Like,
them can, and some are just startups with no structures really. So are there some these common pitfalls that people get to, like say I'm a photographer or maybe a local supermarket, you pay by, your phone number, M-Pesa, then they start sending you all those marketing, messages and whatnot. I mean, are there any steps they can follow just to at least be within the law in the operations?
yes. For small businesses, actually, the way they can follow is you don't need an if I could say full-time DPO, data protection officer in the organization, but you can have those policies drafted for you and have occasional trainings, maybe for the business owners. If it's a one or two people business owned, you can maybe have trainings that will enlighten the business on the way to go. Then maybe just get a consultant advocate to draft the policies that these people can follow. We also have this thing where the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, the ODPC, they offer trainings and they also do audits, and they are absolutely free. All you need to do is just contact the office and they can help you regarding the same. You just need to write to them. If you have any questions or need trainings and audits, they offer that.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Then I can see there's a question by Brian Gitonga. Hi, will the presentation be shared later for review? Yes, Brian. The session is recorded. You'll get the recording once it's uploaded. So no worries on that. That's it. Then we have John who is asking, how is AI addressed in the data protection? How is AI addressed in the data protection? John, if I may ask you to expound kidogo, do you mean like the use of the data that is training these AI models, or what exactly about AI and data protection? Maybe you could expound on that. Then we have Nkada who is asking. Also, like so you say you're running a non-profit organization, this is Nkada, and you have to use students' images since they have benefited from your program to gain some traction. How can I go about this? So maybe I think that's clear. You could answer, Wendy.
Yes. That is actually a question that has been addressed on several occasions, not in this webinar, but in several discussions, the
Okay.
issue of using photos. So
Okay.
photos are also classified as personal, if I could say personal data. It's something that you can use to identify someone. So the way to go with using photos, because you're running a non-profit organization, is to get informed consent. As I had explained before, what informed consent is before you use these photos, you have to explain to them you'll be using their photos, the reason you'll be using their photos, and the way in which you'll be using their photos. You could also explain for how long you intend on keeping their photos and using them. And make sure you give these students an opt-out mechanism. If one of them wants their photo to not be used when you already have it up, you have to have a mechanism to just remove that one person. That is the way you can use them and avoid clashes with the law.
Okay. Thank you, Colin. So I think, Nkada, if you have any follow-up question, you can still ask while we are at it. Then we have Collins who is asking, are there any remedies to persons whose pictures have been used for marketing purposes without their consent? Could I sue? And are there any remedies in law? Collins, that's a good question. So maybe Wendy, you can address that one.
Yes, there are remedies in law. That is actually a breach of Article 31, that's for sure. That's your right to privacy. and some of the provisions under the Data Protection Act. So what you can do, you can seek legal counsel. That's one. Number two, if it's in your own capacity, you can present the SID to the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, the ODPC. They have the mandate to decide cases involving breach of data.
Okay, so Collins can do a lawsuit or something?
Yes, he can do a lawsuit, but the first avenue is the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, which is basically just like a tribunal. You just approach it like you would approach a court.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Then, John, who had a question on AI, has actually expounded and said, generally the use of AI, is there a copyright patent out of which one should reference?
So as at now, the Data Protection Act is actually quite silent on the use of AI. I think it's something that is still underway. That's why you've seen there are a lot of issues and commotion over people AI generating images and you don't know what to do or where to go. So the act is a bit silent on the use of AI.
Okay.
But trust me, courts are always deciding cases. So in case there's an issue with AI, I wouldn't advise approaching the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. I would actually advise approaching the court, because the act that gives a mandate to the ODPC is quite silent on AI.
Okay. Thank you. And I think maybe what I would add is that some of these things are actually some of these emerging technologies and emerging the evolutions within the tech space. So you realize, like, when some of these, even the Constitution and whatnot, were being drafted, there was no like huge advancement in technology and whatnot. And I think this is well captured in the slide on future of data protection and where we are heading to. So expect more regulations within it, and also as more info is coming in, I'm sure also the government is trying to formulate some stuff within that direction. Okay, thank you. Then we have Jenga, who is asking the e-learning. Maybe we also touch on data controller versus processor. Who is a controller? Who is a processor, Wendy? Maybe that one quickly.
Yes. Sorry, I am not sure how I forgot to touch on that.
Okay.
So this thing, okay, I'll just use examples because it's quite confusing when you try to differentiate the two. But basically, a data controller is an individual or organization that determines the purpose and means of processing data. So if I could expound it more, a data controller is basically, if I could use the word, the one who is in charge.
Okay.
Right? This is the person or company that tells you what data is being collected, why is it being collected, how is it being handled. So examples of data controllers can be organizations such as banks. It can be your employer, for example. It can be social media platforms or e-commerce companies. So this is basically the one who is in charge. These are the ones who know why the data is being collected, why is it being collected, and how will it be handled.
Okay.
The processor is the individual or the company. These ones don't get to decide, but they act upon the responsibilities given by the processor. So if we take the example of a bank, let me use Equity Bank. Equity Bank is the data controller. The teller that is there collecting and telling you, fill this 1, 2, 3, do this, do this, do this, that is the processor. Or the person who is acting on behalf of the processor. Sorry, of the controller, that is the data processor. So basically, the controller is the one who, as the word says, controls. Why is it being collected? What will it be used for? How will it be handled? The processor is now the one, the one at the ground. This is the person who is now doing the collecting and doing all that. Then now we have the data subject, who is the owner of the data. This is if I'm collecting your ID number, maybe I'm taking your ID number to use it for another reason. So this second reason that I'm using it for, I have instructions from the controller. You're the data subject. The processor is me now who is collecting the information.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Wendy. We have this question that is, Sharon, how do we go about a scenario where a data processor refuses to delete personal information upon official request? Is it the law way, and how does she maybe just begin with, filing a case and whatnot? That's for Sharon. And I think that is closely intertwined with what Fred is asking. So maybe you can answer both of them. What does the law state about photography, videography in public spaces? Is it against the law to record videos in public spaces, e.g. people who vlog? Yeah, I think this is very rampant, especially when you go to town and there are people, doing their content left, right, and center. And, in one way or the other, you tend to appear in one of those maybe vlogs and whatnot. And I also like to reference, actually, there was a very interesting case that was against, this Catherine Njeri Wanjiru versus Machakos University. That's a lawsuit, actually, you can search it around. So for every participant who is interested, you can see how she was in one of those adverts. Then she claimed that Machakos University actually got some people getting interested in various courses due to her being in the picture. And yeah, I think the end was interesting. She got around 700,000 in compensation. So that's in line with those two questions. So maybe you can comment on how to begin it and maybe the direction to take in case of such a breach. Wendy.
Yes, I'll begin with Sharon's question. If a processor or controller has refused to delete your data upon request, the way you can go is, as I had mentioned before, the ODPC. They retain the mandate to decide such cases regarding personal information. So if you have requested them, maybe in writing or whatever, you can just approach the ODPC with the evidence that your personal data was used for 1, 2, 3 reasons, and you approached the office and they refused. So you just file a suit with the ODPC. The second thing, the recording in public spaces in Kenya. So basically, recording in public spaces is neither legal nor illegal. It depends on how the information will be used, how the recordings and the videos and whatever will be used. Also closely intertwined with the right to deletion. So if someone records you, you're in a public space, you're just minding your business, and someone records you, and you request them to, you come across their images or videos and you request them to delete the information and they refuse to delete, that you can sue. Then also if they're recording, there's also this thing, you can sue under the concept that I had told you, informed consent. This is because you are recorded without your consent. This is the same case as we have a case involving the clubs that just write a simple placard, you're entering a premises that recording will be done and all that, just take note and whatever. That goes against the principles of data protection. So what you can do is you can sue at the ODPC, you can start your case at the ODPC regarding such. So, but generally, to answer the general question, recording in public is neither legal nor illegal, but it must comply with the principles that I had highlighted before. If you're recording someone, you must inform them. If you're posting the video, you must inform them. If they request for it to be deleted, it must be deleted. If you don't agree to the deletion, they can file a suit with the ODPC, or they can file a suit in court.
Thank you, Akili. And we have Martin Onyango who is asking, is there a cost in data protection, or how can someone become a data protection officer? Does one necessarily have to be, a lawyer, or, what are the steps? And also, I think in line with that, I think what I'll comment, there is actually a course on data protection being offered on the eLearning platform. That's free of charge, and actually something you can check out. And because knowledge is everywhere, knowledge is power. So I think, do you necessarily have to be a lawyer, Wendy, to be a data protection officer?
you don't necessarily have to be a lawyer. Anyone can be a data protection officer. So, apologies, actually, if you can just give me a minute, but the simple answer to that is you do not need to be a lawyer for you to be a data protection officer, for as long as
I think we lost Wendy for a second.
Sorry. Yes, I am back. As I was saying, you do not require to be a lawyer for you to be a data protection officer, for as long as you just meet the qualifications and skills. We have certifications that you can do. There are several of them. You can
Okay.
you can do certifications, get certifications from different certified organizations. The keyword is certified. Organizations that are certified to give training in data protection. And that is how you can become a data protection officer.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So Martin, you don't necessarily have to be a lawyer, but I think you need to be very privy to, all these the legal framework around data protection here before again you go to the court and you don't have your facts right. So I think it's like she mentioned, you just need to be privy to what's happening and what's a breach and what's not classified as a breach before you bring all those funny cases that you tend to lose on arrival. So I think that's the principle. And I'll be waiting for the other link to be shared. And I'm told the the course on the platform will be starting in around 18 days. So I'll be able to share the link in the chat almost at the end. And I think we have the last question here. John is asking, how are people protected from lengthy terms and conditions which sometimes users accept B3 without reading word by word? This is in line with data controllers. So when the wakilis have a tendency of writing very complicated, actually even the use of jargons within the law, within the law domain, and for a typical end user, I just maybe skim through it. Some I don't understand, some understand. So is there a way to are people protected from getting into terms that they actually didn't, tend to get into just by mere understanding of the terms used and also some of those lengthy ones? I think that's what John is asking. Can I sue, for instance, maybe by, I didn't know this means this, or what happens to ignorance and all that?
Unfortunately, no. Ignorance is not an excuse.
Okay.
Ignorance cannot be an excuse. If you have lengthy terms and conditions, you could seek legal counsel to actually understand them,
Okay.
because the terms and conditions are actually part of informed consent. And
So
those
how lengthy they are, it's fine. Like, okay, proceed.
so as I was saying, terms and conditions are part of informed consent, and that is how data controllers and processors protect themselves. So in these terms and conditions, yes, they might be complex, some might be 5 or 6, 7 pages long, but
Yeah.
by you ticking on it, we assume that you have read them and understood them and given us consent to use your data as per our terms and conditions. So you cannot just approach court and say they used a word I did not understand. No, it's up to you to actually understand the terms and conditions before you tie yourself down to agree to them.
Okay, so John, no escape route, yeah? So as long as you accepted, it was deemed that you understood the terms and conditions, regardless of the number of pages. That becomes inconsequential. So the link has been shared there in the chat box, so anyone can just click on it. And it's starting in actually 18 days, 1 hours. This course is called Data Protection and Compliance Essentials. Is a deeper dive into the session we've had today, and it will be around data and how privacy, all these compliances within all those regulations, and ISO 27001 and no the 27001, and all those aspects. So it's a deeper dive of the webinar we had today, and you can actually check it out, and it will be instructed by our very own Wakili Wendy. And yeah, John is tough. So I think that's pretty much it about the upcoming course, and several other more courses that you can check and peruse and have a look at. And remember, the the AI bot, you can actually interact with it. Has, knowledge on very many domains. So you can ask anything from agriculture to chemistry, physics, and whatnot. Feel free to interact. Feel free to check it out. Feel free to give feedback. The LinkedIn platform is Marshall School of IT, and I think most questions, actually all questions have been addressed, unless there is a burning one that have not. I think we'll be almost closing, and thank you for keeping time. It's actually 4 p.m. So thank you very much, everyone. There are a few links there in the chat box. You can check if you hadn't checked them out. And thank you very much, our speaker, Wendy Kathurima, for showing up and having a very insightful session. Very informative, actually. And we really appreciate you for that. So
Thank
that the
you.
recording will be done and everything will be shared. You'll be posted on the next webinar and what actually shall be discussed. And if you have a topic of interest that you think maybe we can check it out and have a larger discussion on it, feel free to share that one as well. And I think we'll close it at that. And thank you everyone for showing it up. What is the cost of the course? I think the course will be shared. Is it a free course? I think, Eric, are you in the group or maybe, or not yet determined? So not yet determined. So you'll be posted, Fred. Yeah. All the information will be there in details. So thank you very much and have a very lovely evening and see you on the next one. Thank you very much.